Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. Today we're talking a little bit about the Giants' cap space. Trying to find out where they're going to get this money to sign Leonard Williams, maybe bring back Dalvin Tomlinson, maybe go out and sign a free agent wide receiver. There's a lot of holes that need to be plugged by the Giants and Dave Gettleman this offseason, but we don't know if they're going to be able to get the cap space to get it done because, as we know, COVID-19 has a significant impact on the cap space this offseason. It's going from $198 million, could go as low as $175. They're projecting maybe $185, so it's going to drop pretty significantly. And with that being the case, the Giants are going to have to find ways to shed some money. And we are going to talk about, what players the Giants can let go, who they might be able to cut to save some of that free cash. Before we dive into, the players that are most likely to be released, Anthony, my friend, how are you doing?
I'm doing real good. Update, found the bracelet. Don't worry, guys. I found the bracelet. It was right where I left it in the grass next to the basketball court. So, I'm feeling good. I'm ready to rock and roll. Talk about the Giants cap space. Everybody knows I really want them to sign a wide receiver. Everybody knows I'm a big Kenny Golladay fan. I think that he's a perfect fit for the Giants. But the only way you can get Kenny Golladay is if you have the cap space to do it. And it's not going to come cheap. And neither is Allen Robinson, and neither is Corey Davis, and neither is Chris Godwin, and neither is Curtis Samuel, and neither are any of the other players you want to consider as a top-tier wide receiver. Even the 11th overall draft pick is not going to be a cheap position to pay. So, Giants need cap space. They don't really have it right now. Let's discuss it, see what they can do to maybe get a little bit more cap space. They do have a lot that they can do, but do they have a lot that they should do? That's kind of the question, right? Because they can make these cuts. And I will throw this out there. I said it on Twitter, the Giants are in a tight cap space spot. It will be difficult to get an offensive playmaker in free agency. Everyone said no, they have tons of ways to get underneath the cap. Yes, of course they do, but that would require them cutting like 6 players. So in my humble opinion, that is what I would consider to be difficult. If you have to cut like 6 players just to get under the salary cap, that's pretty difficult, and it's going to be difficult to sign the big-time free agent that you want if you have to make 6 moves just to get to the 7th move and get that player that you want in free agency. It's going to be difficult. They're going to cut some players. Sure, some of these players we want them to cut anyway, but still, they have a lot of ways to manipulate the cap, so I guess Alex has a full list of ways to do it. So I'll listen. I'll give my thoughts and opinions, so take it away, Alex.
Yeah, the Giants are going to have a lot of work to do, specifically Kevin Abrams, this offseason trying to figure out how to open up cap space because, as we know, there are free agents on the roster that they need to resign. Obviously Leonard Williams is the big one. We talked about J.J. Watt yesterday as a potential supplement if they decided to go, let Leonard Williams walk, save a couple dollars, go J.J. Watt for a couple seasons, and then you can bring back Dalvin Tomlinson as well with the additional, the differential money. Because we think maybe if Houston cuts J.J. Watt, maybe he would sign a contract worth maybe $15-17 million. That would save a couple million there. That's a scenario that we did talk about on the last video, so go make sure to check that one out. But as for now, the big one is Nate Solder, right? The big player is Nate Solder, and currently the Giants are in the red about $3.4 million according to Over the Cap. So that's a pretty bad number to be at, especially with the estimated cap supposed to be $176 million this upcoming season, which is down almost $25 million from last year, and it was projected to go up to almost $215 million. So they're really losing $30 million because of the expected $15 million increase. It actually went $15 million decrease. So they have to find ways to lower the cap enough where they can fit a big contract in, maybe 2, but also maintain some of their talent because they do have a lot of depth pieces that they can't let go. And obviously, Nate Solder's a big piece in this. And there's a couple players I'm going to list off right now that they're going to have to make really tough decisions with. So the top 5 Giants salary cap hits for the 2021 season is James Bradbury, who I think is about $17 million, Nate Solder, Kevin Zeitler, Golden Tate, and Blake Martinez. So that accounts for 40% of the Giants' projected cap liabilities. And keep in mind, this is still $176 million, so that's 40% of the projected cap liabilities are Bradbury, Solder, Zeitler, Golden Tate, and Blake Martinez. Obviously, James Bradbury, Blake Martinez, we're not even talking about them. They are staying. They played phenomenal in 2020. We love them, and they're not going anywhere. But when you do talk about Nate Solder, Kevin Zeitler, Golden Tate, that's a different conversation to have. When we're talking about Nate Solder specifically, they could save $6.5 million if they cut him pre-June 1st. But the better decision here would be to cut him post-June 1st. So they save $10 million in that case. $10 million, $4 million in dead money in 2021 and 2022. So that's kind of the problem here. They would be saving 10.5 post-June 1st. So that money won't be available until after June when most of the free agents, the big ones at least, will be already signed. So let's just take Nate Solder's money as $10.5 million post June 1st. Take that, push it beyond that, and say we're using that money for our draft picks. That's our draft pick money. So all the other money here is going to be for our free agents right now. Obviously, you have Golden Tate. That's a big one too. And his actual situation is a little bit interesting as well. If they cut him pre-June 1st, they save $6.147 million and they eat $4.7 million in dead money. So they're saving $6.147 million if they cut him pre-June 1st, but if they cut him post-June 1st, $8.5 million savings. So now you have two players, that's about $18.5, almost $19 million that you can save by cutting those two players, Nate Solder and Golden Tate, post-June 1st, $19 million. The problem is you can't spend that money until after June 1st. So you might ask a guy like Leonard Williams and say, hey, Leonard, we are going to re-sign you. We just have to make a couple of moves, right? We have to make a couple of moves before that. And the reality is, if they tell Nate Solder, or rather Leonard Williams, that we're going to sign him post June 1st, they can make the moves prior. You know what I mean? You get what I'm saying, Anthony? If they do elect to cut Nate Solder and Golden Tate post June 1st, they can ask Leonard Williams to wait until after June 1st to sign him. You get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. They can ask Leonard Williams to wait, but will Leonard Williams want to wait? Probably not. He probably wants to get his money as soon as possible, I would assume. The longer that free agents sit around on the market, the more time there is for their price to drop, their price tag to decrease, right? Kind of go on sale after a while. Make it to the clearance rack into June. They don't want that. They usually just want to get their money, get as much of it as they can, and go from there. So I don't know. I get what you're saying. I see that idea. I've had a similar idea before in the past, and I think we've discussed it before, but I just don't know if it's really very realistic to actually ask a guy like, hey, can you wait before you sign this contract? I guess maybe what would happen is the Giants would have to give him a big contract, say we agree to this deal, but you are not to sign it until this date. Maybe something like that, but they're not going to be able to ask him to wait to make the deal. They would have to make the deal before free agency even begins. Have it in agreement, agree to a deal, agree to sign him to a certain contract, but he doesn't actually put pen to paper until June 1st.
Make it official after, right.
Right.
So,
Which is, I think things like that have happened. Actually something like that that's happened recently, the Matt Stafford trade. Can't be official till March, but they have it, it's an agreement, so it's a confirmed real trade, but it won't take place until March, like 18th or so, 15th, something like that. Whenever free agency, whenever the new league year starts, that's when that trade will be official. The Giants could technically do something like that with Leonard Williams. Again, don't know how likely it is. Don't know how often that really happens amongst players signing contracts. Don't even know if it's actually allowed, if there is any stipulation from the league that says you're not allowed to do that. I don't think there is. I can't see why there would be, but it never happens, so maybe there is a chance. But then also you run the risk, because if that pen doesn't touch the paper and it is not an official signing, he can totally back out of the deal. He could say, oh, I just spoke to the Panthers. The Panthers want to give me $22 million a year, so I'm going to go over there. And then the Giants are like, oh, okay, see ya. Now we don't have Leonard Williams, and we got to wait till June to cut this guy, free up this cap space, so now we're just kind of screwed, right? That can really screw the Giants over. But, there's a lot of other moves that they can make too. Some are more controversial. And one last thing I'll say about Nate Solder, I said this a while ago, if you remember this, Alex. I brought this idea to you, and I said I would not be surprised if Nate Solder retires. And then we had that discussion about what happens to the cap space at the end. It's a little murky. It's a little kind of hard to figure out what exactly happens once he retires. I don't think that his money just drops off the books like that. I think there actually still is some dead cap to pay in case of retirement. But I really do think as the weeks go on and the season approaches, there's a really good chance that Nate Solder retires, because at this point, we're in February now, and the vaccine has not really been distributed the way that we expected it to be by now. And the reason that Nate Solder didn't play in 2020 is because he opted out due to COVID concerns, and he had legitimate COVID concerns. He's a cancer survivor. He has a son who's been battling cancer on and off for a few years. COVID is very frightening, very scary, and very real. A real concern and risk to a guy like Nate Solder and his family. So I would not be surprised if he opts out again. But if you're going to opt out 2 years in a row, at that point, at his age, 32 years old, probably just time to retire. You're not going to drop football for 2 years, come back at 33 years old, especially when you weren't even good like he wasn't really playing at a good level. He's even said that in the past. He wasn't playing at a good level before he opted out. So taking 2 years off, he's not going to, the trajectory of his career, which is something that he said in a quote, is really just kind of messed up there, like his trajectory has just been screwed up by that, by COVID. And that's really unfortunate. That really sucks. I was really hopeful that Nate Solder would come back in, prove us wrong, turn it around to be a great left tackle or right tackle or wherever we chose to put him in 2020. We didn't get to see it. That sucks. But now it just looks like I don't think we're going to see Nate Solder in blue ever again. And, it sucks that it's due to a world pandemic that we don't get to see him. Not due to his performance. It's due to a world pandemic. That really sucks. And that would really suck if this pandemic actually does cause him to retire. I don't want to see that. But at the same time, him retiring might actually be very beneficial for our salary cap space. So, I guess we'll just see what happens with Nate Solder. It's kind of a wait and see game, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm under the boat that I think 2021 is going to be influenced by COVID still, this season especially with the vaccine, having to be rolled out, just over a long period of time. I don't think Nate Solder is going to feel comfortable just yet. And especially, I also, factor this in. His son who had cancer and stuff, he was getting treatment in Boston. If Nate Solder decides, I'm gonna wait for the Giants to cut me, I'm gonna go somewhere else, maybe he ends up going to across the country. Do you think he's really gonna want to go across the country and leave his family? There's no way. He even said.
See, that's a good point. It's like Nate Solder is either going to New York or New England, right? Those are the only two places that make sense for his family, for all the things that they're dealing with off the field. They really don't have many places to go. It would be really difficult to relocate, especially traveling during this pandemic. You actually can't move to a lot of states. You just can't go and leave and find a place to live in a whole nother state right now. It's just a lot of these things that otherwise would be possible are very close to impossible right now. I just can't see him actually leaving and going elsewhere. So, if he does get cut. So I really do think that retirement is fully on the table for Nate Solder in 2021.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, that's the reality. COVID is going to be influencing this upcoming season no matter, how we look at it. And Nate Solder probably isn't going to want to go travel across the country right now. He just said in a quote, that he realized that family is more important than football. That's the reality. So I have no indication, no assumption I'm going to make that he's going to, elect to go across the country for football. It's not going to happen right now. And he's probably better off just letting the Giants cut him anyway, get his guaranteed money and walk. So, and maybe he just doesn't even retire. Maybe he just doesn't sign with anybody. He just stays a free agent, tells his agent, I don't want to mess with anybody right now. I'm just going to take a year off, and I'm just going to get my guaranteed money from the Giants after they cut me. That's honestly in his best interest. So we'll see how they go about this, but obviously cutting him post-June 1st, that'll save a lot of money. But the Giants are in trouble. They are $3 million, $3.4 million really over the cap right now, and they really don't have many players they can cut. It's really Nate Solder with the $10.5 million. It's Golden Tate with the $8.125 million. And maybe, and this is Anthony, this is one I want to ask you about. What do you think about the idea of cutting Kevin Zeitler? I personally am not a fan of cutting Kevin Zeitler. If they do, he's in the final year of his contract. They will get $12 million in savings, $2.5 million in dead money. It's tempting. It's a really tempting route to go. But the reality is, the Giants really need him because he's their only glue on the offensive line. He's the veteran there. He holds it together. He's the only above average guy that I trust at the moment. And if you get rid of him, maybe you're putting Will Hernandez there. Maybe putting Shane Lemieux there. Maybe you're getting a rookie, a supplement. I don't think the Giants can afford to do it, especially if they cut Nate Solder. They don't really have that much money tied up in their offensive line. So I'm okay with keeping Kevin Zeitler and just working and pushing those big contracts. If they say they sign Leonard Williams and they sign a wide receiver, pushing the majority of their cap hit 2022, 2023, that's what they're going to have to do because the Giants did a really great job of signing James Bradbury and Blake Martinez. They pushed their cap hits mostly to next offseason and the offseason after that. Well, really 2022 there's going to really be no dead money on their contracts. So that's a really good sign for the Giants because they're going to be able to backload some of those deals to 2022 when the cap hit hits, and they'll have some space to work with. But do you think that cutting Kevin Zeitler is something that they should consider? Because I don't think it's worth it.
I would not cut Kevin Zeitler unless a very specific scenario occurs where the Giants go offensive guard in round 1 or 2. of the 2021 NFL draft, and they feel like that guy is ready to start and ready to go instantly, and then they can trade Kevin Zeitler. Not even cut Kevin Zeitler. There's really no scenario where I think that you actually should just cut Kevin Zeitler. You mentioned it. He's been our best offensive lineman since he's gotten here. He's been one of the best, pass blocking offensive guards in the NFL throughout the entirety of his career. He's still been a great player for us, a great leader, a really good guy, and everything in between. He has just been great for the Giants. I can't really imagine that they do cut him. I think there's two things that I think are far more likely than him being cut. The number one most likely thing is that he stays and he continues in his role, and that's it. But on top of that, I could see them extending Kevin Zeitler and restructuring his contract and pushing the money down the line, right? Make this year's cap hit a little lower, and then making the next year's a little higher because he doesn't even have one next year. So I could see Kevin Zeitler getting a 1 to 2 year extension. That makes sense. He's gonna be 32, or he's gonna be 31 this season, right? So offensive linemen usually have a shelf life until, about 34, 35, right? So he's got a few more years left, and he's still playing at a decent level. You can push him down to another year or two, maybe extend him through 2022, 2023, right? I could see that happening. That would lower this year's salary cap space, but also, you'd be sacrificing a little bit of salary cap from 22 and 23. But I could see that happening, and then other than that, I could see a trade happening, a draft day trade, right? Let's say the Giants, they're sitting there in round 2. Who's that guy? That guy out of Alabama. I can't remember his name. He's a huge hog molly. He's very refined too, actually, which is surprising because he's just so beefy. He's like a huge meatball. Remember, Alex? We were talking about him. You said he looks like a meatball, right? That guy. He, if he's there, the Giants want to take him. That makes a lot of sense. You do that, and then on the same night that you take him, you trade Kevin Zeitler because you feel like, well, we don't necessarily need him. We can free up cap space and get a lot cheaper at the right guard position. That's something that I could see. You also have to think about the fact that Will Hernandez and Shane Lemieux are going to be fighting at the left guard spot unless we draft somebody. So maybe even in that scenario where you do draft somebody in round 2, you still keep Kevin Zeitler, and then you have that guy play left guard and battle it out with Hernandez and Lemieux, and that's even if Hernandez is still here, because there's a chance that they cut him and save I think it's like $700,000 that they save for doing that in salary cap, but we're so pinched against the cap right now that that's actually possible that they would consider doing that. I think that they'll actually be able to find a trade partner for Hernandez, though, because people really liked him coming out of the draft. He's still very young, so I could see that happening. I think there's a lot of scenarios that could happen at the guard position, but I think really the most likely thing and the most important thing in all of them, Kevin Zeitler is going to stay with the Giants in 2021, in my opinion. I can't see it any other way, and I do think that somehow within either this year or next year, he will get an extension and be here even longer.
I agree. I would love to keep Kevin Zeitler. I think, extending him for another year and spreading the cap hit out would be actually a great move. I think they could do the same thing with Blake Martinez, as I mentioned before. But I'm looking at the over the cap right now. I'm looking at a couple guys who they could potentially cut. And actually, it would be foolish not to cut. Levine Toilolo is one of them. He's a guy, if they cut him, he's zero money in dead cap. He saves about $3 million. That's say goodbye, Levine Toilolo. We're not going to see you again. $3 million there. You save that money. You cut him. Sucks for him, but we need the money right now. And a couple other guys that have zero dead cap hits, if you do, I think it's pre or post June 1st, really, is David Mayo. They could cut him. That's $2.3 million there. Maybe David Mayo didn't really play that much of a role. I say Tate Crowder develops enough that I would feel committed, to him. I don't think David Mayo really needs to stay. So that's $2.3 million there if you cut him. Then Isaac Yiadom, that's $2.18 million. I would cut him because he sucks. Then you have Cody Core, that's $2 million. He tore his Achilles, but he's a premium special teams player. I think I might keep him because of the special teams, but at the same time, $2 million, you can probably go out and draft somebody to do his job for half the price, if not less. So I would say David Mayo, Isaac Yiadom, Cody Core, and Levine Toilolo are all cut candidates, and if you combine all their money together, it's basically over $9 million. Right? That's $9 million. You can use your draft picks to fill those spots with ease. Levine Toilolo, say goodbye. David Mayo, what do you think about this, though? What do you think about Levine Toilolo, David Mayo, Isaac Yiadom, and Cody Core? Are there any of those guys that you would keep?
I would consider keeping Isaac Yiadom. I think that he is solid depth. The rest of them, I'm good to let go. Cody Core, the thing with him, he was a great special teamer. He got injured. That really sucks. I hate when injuries derail players' careers, but we kind of replaced him with Nate Ebner. Nate Ebner was pretty good for us. Nate Ebner, once he got injured, though, was pretty once Nate Ebner got injured, the special teams really collapsed, which showed how important Nate Ebner was. So if Nate Ebner's healthy again and he's coming back to the Giants, I think we're good at the special teams position that Cody Core used to be filling, right? So I like Nate Ebner in that role. Cody Core, like I said, he was a great gunner. He was a great special teamer, but, the injury coming back, I don't know how he's going to come back from that. I don't know if he'll be the same player. It's kind of a position that is pretty expendable anyway, especially when you have a good special teams coordinator, and the Giants really have two of those once you include both Thomas McGahee and Joe Judge into that equation. David Mayo, I'd like to see the Giants cut him. I've never been a big David Mayo fan. He's strictly a run defender. I get that that's a pretty good role that he defines, and he's good at that role, but I feel like you can probably find somebody on a rookie contract to fill that same role. Maybe not as well, but they can do it, right? I actually do like Tate Crowder. Tate Crowder's a little more athletic and actually a little bit better in coverage. Not as good in the running game, whatever. I like Tate Crowder, linebacker too. And I think that the Giants honestly will be able to find another linebacker that can fill in the mid to later rounds of the 2021 NFL draft, right? And maybe they can even find in the bargain bin in free agency and get a guy there. Not a big David Mayo fan. But yeah, Isaac Yiadom, I actually do like. I think that Yiadom had some pretty solid performances last year. I think he had some that were atrocious, and he had some that were pretty solid. He was growing. He's a young player. He's still learning. He's a little too young to just give up on. He's decent talent. I don't like to give up on talent. I know that's a famous Dave Gettleman quote that he said right before he gave up on Odell Beckham Jr. But then he also put faith into Jabril Peppers and O'Shane Ximines and Dexter Lawrence. So, he put faith into those talented players, and talented they are. They've actually pretty much revolutionized our defense in a way, right? If you look at it without those players and with those players, our defense far better, far superior. Went off on a tangent there. Sorry about that. But, yes, Isaac Yiadom, talented, young, inconsistent, has a lot of room to grow. I think that he's solid depth at the very least. No, I don't want to see him start at cornerback 2 this year. Not at all. But let's say that James Bradbury gets hurt for a game or two. I want to see Isaac Yiadom get in there and be familiar with the defensive scheme and fill in. Or let's say whoever's at CB2 gets injured, right? Isaac Yiadom's good depth. He knows the scheme. I actually like him as a depth piece. I don't think cutting him is the most beneficial thing for us. And is that everybody, or am I missing one of those players?
Levine Toilolo, I think you hit on him.
Oh, Toilolo, get Toilolo out of here. I can't stand Toilolo. I can't stand his contract. I hate that contract. I think it's horrendous. I can't understand why that was ever signed. I can't believe that the Giants really did that. I know he's that 6'8" giant blocking tight end. He's not even that good at blocking. He's okay. He's about average. I would rather just cut him and get a blocking tight end in the 7th round of the draft who's going to have the exact same level of efficiency and productivity. So, yeah, let's get that contract out of here, man.
Exactly. So just to review everything that we talked about, this kind of video is to round up all of the different cap expenditures that they have and really who they could cut to create some room. So, of course, they're down about $3.4 million in the cap right now. They have to clear money. Even after Leonard Williams, $16 million, you might ask, how about the $16 million that Leonard Williams was paid last year? Doesn't that free up? Can you reallocate it? I'm looking already into 2021. That money is off the books. That's how much the money Giants spent this past year. And really, the contracts like James Bradbury now jumping up to $17 million in dead money, it takes up a lot. There's a lot of cap hits that are going to be hitting hard. And Nate Solder, too, because he didn't count last year. He's counting this year. So that money gets tied up immediately. So just to round things up, overall, Nate Solder, you cut him June 1st, you save $10.5 million. You cut Golden Tate post June 1st, you save $8.5 million. So you're at about $19 million in savings. You're at about $15 million after the 3.4, a little bit more. So, you're at $15 million here that you can spend. And then you cut Levine Toilolo, it's another $3 million. You're at $18 million to spend. I don't really care much about David Mayo either. So that's another 2.3. That's another, we're pretty much hovering around $20 million to spend right now. Isaac Yiadom, I don't really think it's necessary to keep him because we have Sam Beal coming back. And I do think Julian Love looked pretty good enough to fill in if they needed him to. And I think you can always draft somebody in the 3rd, 4th round and really get someone that can fill in equally Isaac Yiadom. He didn't play so well that I was like, okay, nobody can supplement his loss. There's going to be a lot of really good, and keep this in mind, there's going to be a lot of phenomenal depth, veteran cornerbacks that are hitting the free agent market because teams are in the same position. The Giants are not the only ones in the position right now, of cap hell. So a lot of teams are gonna have to shed guys. Like Xavier Rhodes is a really big name that has to get cut, and he's not gonna get a massive contract until next year. So maybe some of these veteran guys that have some quality left over, will sign one-year contracts for cost-efficient deals, roll that into good performances, compound that into bigger contracts in 2022. So that's kind of how I'm perceiving things. So, we're at $20 million. Add Isaac Yiadom. I don't think he's necessary. That's $22 million. Cody Core, $24 million. If you really want to trade Evan Ingram, you could trade him. That's $6 million. Now you're at 20. You're at $30 million now. $30 million. You can sign a wide receiver and Leonard Williams, and then you can just supplement with draft picks. And just fill those spots as need be. Of course, this is this 52-man roster that we're looking at right now, so you can fill those lower depth pieces. Obviously, David Mayo is replaceable. I think Isaac Yiadom, Sam Beal could take his spot. Cody Core is replaceable. Levine Toilolo, get him the hell out of here. He's replaceable. Evan Ingram, if you want to trade him, he's one of our only playmakers, but I think you could draft somebody in the first and second round and easily replace him. If you go Kyle Pitts, Jalen Waddle, you draft a wide receiver. You still have Caden Smith. I think Caden Smith actually fits Jason Garrett's scheme better than Evan Ingram. Even though Evan Ingram did manage to create separation and actually get open, he just can't catch the freaking ball, so it's irrelevant. These are all different things that we talk about here, but I think the Giants, if they made a bunch of these moves, they can get up to $24 to $30 million in cap space to spend. The question is, how much can they spend on Leonard Williams? Can they keep Dalvin Tomlinson? Can they sign a wide receiver? In my opinion, it's going to be you sign Leonard Williams, you sign a wide receiver, and you backload most of those contracts to the second and third years of the deal because they did such a good job of formulating and really formatting James Bradbury and Blake Martinez's deal to hit in the second and third seasons. So this is kind of a roundup of everything. Anthony, if you have anything else to add in terms of what you think the Giants should do with this money, if they have $25 million to spend, how do you think they allocate it?
Well, if I have anything left to add, it's cut Levine Toilolo. But if I'm going to discuss what they should do with that money, yes, I think they should be targeting a wide receiver. Now, I know that a lot of teams are going to be targeting wide receivers. It's not going to be easy. Just because the Giants have the money to do it doesn't mean they're actually going to be able to sign Kenny Golladay or Allen Robinson or anybody else. They can choose to go elsewhere. The Giants have a lot of questions. Maybe a lot of these guys, we hate on Jason Garrett's scheme all the time. Who's to say that Allen Robinson isn't going to hate on it as well when the Giants pick up the phone and call him? You know what I mean? I don't know if anybody really wants to play in that Jason Garrett scheme. We'll see what happens. Money talks, so talk more bucks, right? That's the saying. If the Giants have a lot of money to throw at one of these guys, maybe they can persuade them to come over. That's the number one thing. I say you target a wide receiver. If you can't do that, maybe you just let the money roll over to next year and you save it, you hold on to it, and then you target the wide receiver position in the draft. There's infinite possibilities. We'll start to narrow them down as players get re-signed leading up to free agency, and we know exactly what the free agent market is going to look like. But yeah, number one thing to do with that money, target a wide receiver. Maybe find some edge help. Hassan Reddick is a nice name that might actually be able to get signed on kind of a bargain deal. Another guy who might be a little bit more expensive because he's really proven himself over the last 2 years is Shaquille Barrett. He might hit the open market. We'll see what happens over in Tampa Bay. There's a few names out there that the Giants can consider. But yeah, wide receiver is the number one priority in free agency, in my opinion. Then the edge rusher position. And then I think that you can look at a couple more nuanced positions like CB2 and tight end as well, because even if you don't trade Evan Ingram, you probably want a really solid tight end too in this Jason Garrett scheme, one who's not just a 6'8", $5 million blocking tight end, right? So that's really my opinion on what the Giants should do in free agency, but of course we will continue to discuss all of this leading up to March and then discussing the draft leading up to April, so stay tuned to Fireside Giants, man, because we got a lot of good content coming.
Oh, yeah. Every day we're posting YouTube videos. We're working around the clock for you great people. And thank you so much for the support. The last couple of videos are popping off, especially the Deshaun Watson heated debate. That was really fun. And we'll do some more debates. If you guys have any suggestions, leave them in the comments. We'd love to get your feedback, what you want us to do, what you want us to talk about. We can argue about a different couple players. Really fun, especially when it's personal. So we love it. Thank you guys so much for the support. And we will catch you guys on the next one.